Ever wonder how to deal with grief? Well, our next guest wrote a book about it, so let's connect. Well, hello again, everybody, and thank you for taking the time to visit with me at the Connect Podcast with Mel Capers. I am the one and only Mel Capers. Happy to be here with you. I got to tell you, we got a show today for you. But before we get going, let me just take this opportunity to give thanks to my great creator for allowing me just another opportunity to do his will on this side of heaven. This episode is brought to you by some wonderful friends of mine who have been with me since season 1. Let me first thank Sonia Pinckney Rhodes. She is founder and CEO of J.M. Pinckney Publishing, where they're doing great things. Her company is the publisher of my guest's book. And my guest will be speaking about her incredible experience with J.M. Pinckney Publishing. So you can learn more about J.M. Pinckney Publishing by going to their website at jmpinckneypublishing.com. I'd also like to send a special thank you to my dear friend. She is Ronalda Sullivan, founder and CEO of Dream Differently. Ronalda is a coach, speaker, and mindset mentor whose goal is to help clients reimagine their reality and create their dream life. You can learn more about this incredible owner's services by visiting their Dream Differently website at ronaldasullivan.com. And finally, let me shout out Kevin and Tasha White, co-founders at Vanguardian Global. Kevin and Tasha are producers of exhilarating events as well as innovators who are leading the way with new groundbreaking developments and ideas all over the world. You can learn more about their services by visiting their website at vanguardianglobal.com. Now it's time for us to buckle up and let's get ready for our first segment, that segment we call the Meet and Greet. Here we are. It's so good to be with you again. And I've got a special guest. She makes me feel special every time I'm in her company. And I tell you what, the last time was a fun time. She's here again. And I tell you, great things are going to happen because she is here again. Dr. Shanelle Fields, how are you?
I am well. Excited about this conversation we're going to have and happy to be here.
Well, I tell you, it's so nice to have you back, and I feel like I'm just sitting down with family members, because the folks who come on my podcast, we stay on after the camera goes off, and we stay in touch. And I had a great old time with some guests a short time ago, and I'm so delighted to see you here. So tell me, what's been going on? I know you have a second book, and we're going to talk about that second book, but for the listening audience who didn't hear you the first time, why don't we find out a little background behind you? Who is Dr. Shanelle Fields?
Well, I am a country girl from Florence, South Carolina, born and raised. Lived there until I went to college at the College of Charleston in downtown Charleston, South Carolina. Decided to stay. Worked in the school system for roughly 18 years as a teacher and a school counselor. I worked with students from all ethnicities, backgrounds, socioeconomic status. Really enjoyed my time, but I only saw things from the outside in. I wanted to look at things from the inside out. So 2 weeks before the pandemic shut the world down, I resigned from my school counseling job and became a private practice therapist full time. And that is what I've been doing. I have my own private practice in Somerville, along with doing lots of motivational speaking and presentations about mental health, giving some workshops here and there, and writing a couple books here and there whenever in the meantime, and my most important role of being a mom.
Oh, right. A mom of how many children?
Just one.
Just
one.
a son.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Hey, let me ask you about a day in the life, because seems like you've done everything. I remember when I was in school, you were the teacher who used to come by with the ruler and hit us in the hands, right? And I think I remember seeing you when I was in kindergarten. You were hitting me in my hand. Well, maybe not way back. Well, you got to remember, I graduated kindergarten when I was 13. So, but I mean,
okay, gotcha. Okay, that would explain it. Yes.
I tell everybody that I'm the strongest C- student that school
There
history has ever known.
That's right.
So, tell us a little bit about the day in the life, because it seems like after you resigned, you said you wanted to get a view from the outside looking in. What got you to that point where you said, I'm going to make this leap?
As a school counselor, we often, as a teacher, our students look for outlets or safe places in adults in the school system. I had the wonderful pleasure of being an outlet for a lot of different students. I took them home with me at night and their issues and problems. Also met their parents. And so I wanted to be able to work with them on the inside. See what was causing the depression or the low self-esteem. So I said, hey, I want to do this full time. I worked on a license, and I just believe God directed me. This is your purpose in this moment. And so he redirected my focus, and I've been in the office counseling since 2020 full time every day. I have one thing I have to add. Since the last time that I was here, I actually am now working in funeral service. So I'm actually a funeral director apprentice. It is the family business. So I am learning how to direct funerals, but also work with families. More importantly for me, it is getting to know them in their time of need, so that if we offer grief counseling, in which we do, they won't consider me a stranger, right, and they will feel comfortable in coming to get counseling for their grief.
Talk about when you started your practice. When did you? Because if I got the chronology right, you resigned either, you said just before the pandemic hit.
Yes.
And so when you resigned, were you planning to go and start your own practice at that time?
When I actually resigned, I had been working just on the weekends and maybe twice a week in the afternoons in a building with a friend. I'm in an office with a friend. And when the pandemic happened, it was just very pressing to go right then. And private practice had always been in my thought process, but the opportunity didn't present itself. And I truly believe that it was time was of the essence to go right then. And even during the pandemic, I've been busy and still in business. So I'm very grateful. When a lot of other businesses unfortunately did not make it, I'm still here.
How do you do it? I mean, because I know they don't have a secret sauce at school in the PhD program to say, you take this and it won't get on your nerve. I mean, because, when I had little ones, it was tough, like the parents who turned to you. And you said just a moment ago, you used to take the kids' issues with you at home.
Yes.
I mean, how do you condition yourself to be able to process the different stories and the different issues people have that you see? How do you do that?
Worry about what I can control, and meaning that I took it as my purpose was to be a listening ear, to try to find solutions. If those still didn't work, then I had to remember the role that I was in and provide that support as much as I could. But I was often that school counselor that if the student needed something, didn't have food or supplies, I was going to do my best to get it for them, because oftentimes that meant that no one else was looking out for them, or they couldn't get it elsewhere. Or I was going to try to reach out to resources that may be able to offer it to them. So I held space for my students. And I believe that I hold space for my clients now. I do take more breaks now than I did before, though.
And when you say breaks, you mean getaways?
I used to not work on Fridays. So that was my day off from the office. And during the weekends, I don't work on the weekends anymore. So that is also my downtime.
Okay. So you don't get out of town and just enjoy
here and there. But now that I have this extra job, it's as a funeral director apprentice, those, you can't pick the time someone's.
That's right.
When they perish. So, you have to be ready, but I do try to rest more, where I am not thinking, I am just relaxing. I spend time with my son, and I have a puppy. So I try to spend time with them and just relax.
Dr. Fields, it's people like you who I think are absolutely godsend. You're so blessed because, I look at TV and see a sad story of children, and it just breaks me down. And I mean, what did you go through when the issue happened in Texas at the school when all those young kids were murdered? I mean, that's got to be the most gut-wrenching thing.
Yes.
I'll let you tell me.
First, even before my job, I'm a parent. And to imagine my child going to school and never returning, the feeling of not being able to control the situation, or not being able to help, those children, utterly hopeless, as I'm sure those parents felt. That loss will be felt for forever. Even with the teachers that were not coming home, very shortly after one of the teachers that got killed, her husband died of a massive heart attack because of what happened to his wife. So now you have children who are left with no parents. So that kind of loss dominoes, and it affects everyone, even if you weren't there. But to see it, it's so unfortunate and so painful that we get PTSD by just hearing it. Second trauma by looking at the TV or reading the newspaper every day. So it was hard. It was very gut-wrenching and horrible to see and hear about, to even think about.
Well, it's always a pleasure talking to you and every time I speak to you, I find out more and more and more about you. It truly is amazing, and I love speaking with you. But we have to move on, and we have to get into our next segment we call On the Horizon. We need to talk about your book. So are you ready to get into the next segment?
I am ready. Let's go.
In our segment we call On the Horizon, we're here with Dr. Shanelle Fields. She is an amazing person, but she is an author who has a new book out. And I believe, if I got it right, I cried over this all night long. It said Griefs Mattered, right? Grief Matters.
Yes.
Tell me, number one, how did you get to the title of the book, Grief Matters? What's going on there?
Whew. So much there, Mr. Capers. I'll start off by saying this. 2017, I lost my mother, and it absolutely changed my life. But I believe that there was purpose in my pain. And I went through that process, I feel like, alone. I did have people to reach out, but I had to experience the pain. I had to experience or get used to the absence. I had to experience the emotions of grief in order to get to where I am now. And I wanted to give others the permission to grieve, because I believe, again, in society and generationally, we're taught to get over it, or you should be over this by now. And grief has no time limit. It is very individual and specific. So I encourage emotional release. I encourage my clients as well as others. You don't have to be okay in this process. It takes time. We talk about triggers. I had to understand that Mother's Day would never be the same for me again. Instead of trying to hold it in and say, hey, I can make it. I remember trying to make it to church that May after my mother died in March. I pulled in the parking lot and I couldn't take it. It was not even doable. Christmas is still hard. Speaking of, I remember the first Christmas without her. I just went back to bed because it was very overwhelming. And I say all that to say my grief did matter. It mattered to me. So I wanted people to understand that they don't have to hide their feelings. They don't have to get over it, in a short amount of time. Oftentimes when I see clients for grief, they are debilitated. They can't sleep or eat. They are overwhelmed. And it's because they did not allow the grief process to happen. So that's how I came up with Grief Matters.
Take us through the process of writing the book. Did you start writing it after you lost your mother, or take us through that process?
It was in my head. Yes. I didn't actually put it down on paper until some years later. To be honest with you, after my first book, I said the next book I'm going to write is going to be about grief. And I knew that back in 2020. I believe that was something that God gave me. And I just didn't know whether I was going to write it by myself or was I going to invite others to come and be a part of the book. But I knew it was going to be about grief. So I felt like it was important to get authentic perspectives of grief because it is a real thing. And I wanted to confront some of those myths. So I began to enlist support of people, professionals who I know who have experienced grief. And I wanted to see what they thought about it, past and present. So I reached out and we had deadlines for writing. We began to write and we all had deadlines and we all put it together. And it's funny, even though we never talked about what we were going to discuss in the book, we all really mirrored a lot of the same things in our chapters, in our sections. And so it was great to see that other people felt the same way and wanted to encourage others to feel like they had the permission to grieve.
I asked that question and I'm going to kind of drill it down to you and the others who wrote the book jointly. I mean, are you all, or were you all at the same place when we're talking about, if we're in grief, if we're happy or what? I mean, what causes one to write a book about grief or write on grief unless you're there is what I'm getting at.
I think number one, it affected our lives so greatly. That's the number one, because the loss doesn't ever really go away. You just learn how to cope with it better. One of the authors, she took care of and watched her mom, pass away. And now she's in she lives in anticipatory grief because her father is 90 and he is ailing and she is his caretaker. So she is now watching him go through this process. And she talks very specifically in the book how she wakes up to listen to the monitor of him in the other room to make sure that he is still breathing. So she wakes up to that every day. So I think that each of us are in different spaces or different stages of grief. Some of the authors are better or further along in the process than others. Just because you've accepted it doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't still affect you. Because acceptance is that final stage of grief, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that you're past it not bothering you or you don't are not triggered by things. So I think that we all, like I said, acknowledge that it changed us. Number two, we admitted to having to move through the process and go through it. And number three, that we have all had moments where we had to sit down and really absorb what was happening to us. We had to first acknowledge what we were dealing with. And I think that's the other big part of this book is a lot of times we don't like to admit that we're grieving something, because that means we have to slow down. We have to take how can I say, we have to slow our steps down. We have to listen to what is going on with us.
I have two questions, because I don't want to get too far behind, but two questions, and then we'll move on to the next segment. What do you and your co-authors, what do you want people to get from this book?
That number one, that grief is a real thing. It does exist. It is painful and difficult. That's the first thing. And number two, you can't outrun it. You can't hide from it. It is very dominant. I like to say in sessions that grief is very dominant, almost as if you don't deal with it, it's going to deal with you.
Wow. You know, I've it's been rare that I've actually sat down with a guest and felt like I was being counseled. I'm the one laying on a couch and you're just helping me through this. It's amazing. I love this. But, I mean, I can send you money later, but tell me something. I heard you say earlier off air that you were going to be on radio, or you have something coming up on radio. Talk about that.
Oh my goodness. Circumstances. I rode with my best friend to Charlotte, and she had an opportunity for some advertising for her business. She's an engraver. And we went to a radio station. They're doing a give back program, and the one of the radio hosts pitched a chance to have a segment on radio. And my best friend was not interested. However, my ears perked up because I love to educate and help others. So I spoke to him about it. I actually have a meeting coming up to see if I can get this segment on this radio show or radio segment in Charlotte. And the segment is going to be called Living Well. So I'm excited about it. I'm going to hopefully give the audience some good tips and is to be happy and to live well in their lives.
Yeah, because I mean, like I said, just talking to you now, and I just kind of went through a wave of ups and down, and you got me back out of there, and I could just keep listening. You remind me of Michelle Obama, I'm telling you.
Oh, I'll take it. I will definitely take it. Yes.
You just got me where you were taking me. It's a wonderful thing.
Yes.
It's a wonderful. And where can people get your book?
It is available at a few different places. It is available at Amazon. It is available at Barnes & Noble's online, as well as Walmart. All of those places are online. And Barnes & Noble, it is in stock, meaning that it is in the store.
How enjoyable was that process of writing that book?
It was actually very therapeutic. For me, I did cry through my chapter, but I needed that. Again, as I talk about all the time, emotional release is good. I think we've been taught to be afraid of tears, but it is a very great way to release whatever you're feeling. It allowed me to replay some moments, but it allowed me to say that I got past it. So even though it was a moment of sadness, it also allowed me to say, hey, you're not in that space anymore. So I was able to celebrate the win even through the tears.
Wow. Well, let me ask this. We're getting ready to get out of this segment, but we're still on the horizon. What is on the horizon for Dr. Shanelle Fields? What's coming up?
Some good things. Continuing my love to help others and educate others. I'm creating some course content on Thinkrific in some some good information. My first course is going to be called How to Embrace Being Single, which I'm excited about because I believe that you have to be in the right space to be able to be in that moment and time in your life. I'm also going to talk about ways to boost your self-esteem. So I'm just trying to share some tidbits and some good things that I've acquired and learned as I'm navigating through this therapy process that I want to share with others. So I'm excited about that.
Very excited for you as well. I tell you, every time I talk to you, I straighten your picture up on the wall. I'm telling you.
Oh, that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yes, it is. Hey, let's get ready to get into our final segment we call the Connect segment. You ready to connect?
I am ready to connect.
Let's do it. So here we are in our final segment we call the Connect segment with Dr. Shanelle Fields. She is everything. But the main thing she is today is she's the author, who is one of the authors of the book, Grief Matters. And I tell you, you've got to go to Barnes & Nobles. You've got to go to Amazon.
Yes.
You've got to go check out her book because just listening to her has helped me. And I talk about grief in a small way. And I had loss in the family as well. And it's tough. It's really, really tough. And you ask a lot of questions. But if you can get to the other side of grief or going through the process and somebody helping you to get through that process, and you can laugh outside and inside too, it's a great thing. And that's what you've been helping me do today. And I appreciate you so much. So how do people connect with Dr. Shanelle Fields?
A couple of different ways. Number one, I created a directory of healers such as myself, licensed professional counselors, licensed social workers, and life coaches. We are in the great state of South Carolina, and it's called the Healing Group. You can go on the website and see the list of these awesome practitioners, and it has contact information. I also have my practice website, www.takingthefirststep.net, N-E-T, is the other way. I'm on Open Path as well. I'm trying to think of some other ways. You can also just type in Dr. Shanelle Fields in Google, and it will pop up to be able to see where my practice is and be able to contact me as well.
So before we get ready to get out of here, I need to ask, I ask all my guests the same question. Now's the time to shout out somebody. Who do you want to shout out? Now's a great time to shout out anybody you want to.
Yes, I would love to shout out to my co-authors. Ms. Vera Brown, who is a licensed professional counselor. Dr. Laganna Lawrence, who is a school counselor. Ms. Deidra Addison, who is a life coach. And I also want to shout out Ms. Esaunta Buncomb, who is a life coach as well. These are my co-authors of this awesome and amazing book, Grief Matters. Thank you, ladies, for sharing this vision with me. I just want to shout out all my friends and family. Thank you for believing in me. And to my dad and my brother, thank you for being a stable force in my life. And of course, to my son, thank you for giving me a purpose beyond my wildest dreams of being your mom.
What's your son's name?
His name is Isaiah.
Of course.
His name is Isaiah.
Of course his name is Isaiah.
Yes.
Well, as usual, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on. I tell you, and please feel free to come back on anytime you want to. I'm here. I love talking to you. I love going through here to there with you because you really have that talent to be able to talk to people and just take them on that journey. And I felt it. So thank you so much for being who you are. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I always appreciate the opportunity, Mr. Capers. Thank you for allowing me a chance to share what I love to do and for empowering others. I believe that is my purpose in life, is to educate, motivate, and encourage.
Well, may God continue to bless you.
You as well.
And we will see you the next time.
Yes. Take care.
We'd love for you to subscribe to our podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. So please like, share, subscribe, and leave a review. You can also find us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn at Mel Capers Coaching. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.